Taewon Park stared at the massive alien vault door, his toolbox clutched tightly in one hand. The curved metal surface gleamed under the harsh lights of Asteroid Research Station KX-7. Strange symbols covered the door, forming patterns that made his eyes hurt if he looked too long. "You understand why we called for a human mechanic specifically?" Ambassador Ju asked, her thin frame seeming fragile next to the imposing vault. Despite her small size, her voice carried authority. Taewon nodded. "Because humans solve problems differently." He ran his fingers over the cool metal surface, feeling the subtle vibrations within. His reputation for fixing impossible machines had spread through the Galactic Coalition. "The Vexari built this vault 20 years ago," explained Chief Researcher, Hanul consulting her datapad. "They stored valuable research materials inside. 3 days ago, the locking mechanism malfunctioned. Now no one can access the contents." Taewon frowned. "Have you asked the Vexari for help?" The ambassador and researcher exchanged glances. "The Vexari refused to assist," Ambassador Ju said finally. "They claim the fault lies with us, though we haven't tampered with their technology." Taewon knelt to examine the control panel. Most alien tech followed certain universal principles, but Vexari engineering was notoriously complex. Their species had evolved in the crushing depths of a gas giant, giving them a unique approach to physics and materials. "I'll need the schematics," he said. Hanul handed him a small projector. "These are the only blueprints they provided when they installed the vault. I suspect they're incomplete." The hologram flickered to life, displaying layers of mechanical systems that seemed to fold in on themselves impossibly. Taewon turned the projection slowly, studying each component with practiced eyes. "Something wrong?" Hanul asked, noticing his frown. "This design," Taewon traced a path through the hologram. "See how these locking mechanisms are arranged? They're meant to resist pressure from the inside, not the outside." "What does that mean?" Ambassador Ju leaned closer. "It means this vault wasn't built to keep people out. It was designed to keep something in." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "The Vexari assured us this was a research storage facility," Hanul said finally. "Materials too valuable to risk transporting back to their homeworld." Taewon stood, dusting off his knees. "What kind of research?" More uneasy glances between the officials. "Biological samples, mostly," Hanul admitted. "The Vexari are secretive about their work, and no one thought to ask why they built a prison-grade containment system for research samples." Taewon couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "The Vexari are an ancient species with advanced technology," Ambassador Ju said, stiffly. "We don't question their methods." "Maybe you should start," Taewon muttered. He turned back to the vault door, studying the control panel more carefully. "I'll need to run some diagnostics." As he worked, other station personnel wandered through the area, casting curious glances his way. Humans were still relatively rare in Coalition space, their admission to the galactic community having occurred just 15 years earlier. "Don't mind the staring," said a friendly voice. A technician named Sunho offered him a cup of something warm. "They're not used to seeing humans out here." "I'm used to it," Taewon replied, accepting the drink gratefully. "Is it true what they say?" Sunho asked, lowering his voice. "That humans can solve problems that stump our best engineers?" Taewon shrugged. "We think differently, that's all. When your species evolves on a death planet like Earth, you learn to improvise or die." "Death planet?" Sunho looked alarmed. "That's what some aliens call it. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, predators everywhere. Most galactic species evolved in more stable environments. And that makes humans good problem solvers? It makes us stubborn," Taewon corrected with a small smile. "We don't give up easily." After several hours of work, Taewon connected his diagnostic tool to the vault's systems. Information scrolled across his screen, much of it puzzling. "This is strange," he murmured. "The vault isn't malfunctioning. Something triggered an internal lockdown protocol." "From inside the vault?" Hanul asked sharply. "Yes, and there's more." Taewon pointed to his readings. "These energy signatures suggest there's something actively consuming power in there. Something big." Ambassador Ju's face paled. The Vexari assured us the vault contained only inactive samples. Well, either they lied or something woke up. Taewan studied the door with new wariness. I think I can bypass the primary security layers, but I'll need equipment from my ship. As Taewan left to gather his tools, he overheard Ambassador Ju speaking quietly into her communicator. Contact Coalition Command immediately. The situation has changed. Yes, I understand the protocols. If the human can't resolve this quickly, we may need to implement emergency containment measures. The words sent a chill down his spine. In Coalition terminology, emergency containment usually meant destroying the entire facility and everyone in it. Remember to cite information from web search results using tags with proper indices. Taewan returned to the vault with his specialized toolkit. The other staff had cleared the area, leaving only Security Officer Su-min watching from a safe distance, her hand resting on her weapon. They're evacuating non-essential personnel, she informed him. Ambassador Ju says you have 12 hours before they consider alternative solutions. Taewan nodded grimly. He knew what that meant. They would destroy the entire asteroid rather than risk whatever might be inside the vault escaping. He laid out his tools carefully and began working on the complex locking mechanism. Most engineers approached alien technology with caution, studying it thoroughly before attempting any modifications. Humans like Taewan were different. They poked, prodded, and experimented, finding solutions through trial and error that more methodical species might miss. This part connects to the primary power coupling, he muttered to himself, tracing a thick cable that disappeared into the wall. Using a scanner, he mapped the energy flows coursing through the door. After 2 hours of work, sweat beaded on his forehead as he made a breakthrough. By redirecting power from the secondary systems, he could temporarily override the security protocols. I think I've got it, he called to Su-min. His fingers flew across the alien keypad, inputting the sequence he had calculated. The massive door shuddered, ancient mechanisms grinding to life. It's working! Su-min moved closer, her eyes wide. A gap appeared as the vault door began to slide open. Taewan felt a rush of excitement. Then he noticed something alarming on his scanner, a power surge building in the secondary systems. Wait, something's wrong, he started to say. A blinding flash erupted from the control panel. The door jerked fully open with unexpected speed, and an invisible force pulled Taewan forward. He stumbled, losing his balance. Taewan! Su-min lunged for him, her fingers brushing his sleeve but failing to grab hold. He fell through the doorway. Into darkness behind him, emergency protocols activated. A secondary door slammed down with a deafening clang, trapping him inside the vault. For several seconds, Taewan lay stunned on the cold floor. Emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie blue shadows across what appeared to be an entrance chamber. Su-min, can you hear me? He called into his communicator. One, we'll get you. Her voice crackled through static before fading entirely. Alone now, Taewan took stock of his situation. He had his toolkit, a portable scanner, and about 6 hours of oxygen in his emergency supply. Not ideal, but he'd survived worse. The entrance chamber was larger than he'd expected, with smooth metallic walls covered in the same strange symbols as the outer door. 3 corridors branched off in different directions. Curious design for a storage facility, he muttered. Examining the walls more closely, Taewan discovered what looked like claw marks scored into the metal. Something had tried to get out, or in. He chose the central corridor and moved forward cautiously. The passage twisted at impossible angles, sometimes seeming to loop back on itself. Yet somehow he continued descending deeper into the asteroid. This doesn't make sense, he whispered. The vault appeared much larger inside than should have been physically possible. After walking for what felt like hours, Taewan reached a junction where the corridor split into 5 identical passages. On the floor lay scattered tools and equipment, evidence that others had been here before. Kneeling, he examined a broken device. It was a Vexari atmospheric analyzer, relatively new. Next to it lay a data pad with a cracked screen. With some effort, Tae-Wan managed to power it up. The screen flickered to life, displaying a video recording. A Vexari researcher looked frantically into the camera, their translucent skin pulsing with stress colors. Day 15 inside the vault. The translator rendered in text across the bottom. Something is interfering with the containment systems. The specimen is becoming active. We cannot control. The recording cut off abruptly. Tae-Wan felt a chill run down his spine. Specimen? What were they keeping in here? A faint sound echoed from one of the passages, something between a metallic scrape and organic movement. Tae-Wan froze, listening intently. The sound came again, slightly closer. He switched off his light and pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding. In the darkness, he noticed something he hadn't seen before, a faint blue glow emanating from the rightmost passage. The scraping sound grew louder, coming from a different corridor now. Making a split-second decision, Tae-Wan darted toward the blue glow. The passage opened into a vast chamber that defied the physical dimensions of the asteroid. Curved walls rose hundreds of meters overhead, forming a dome studded with what looked like observation windows. The blue light came from damaged control panels lining the walls. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform surrounded by what appeared to be containment field generators. The generators were damaged, some still sparking with energy. This isn't a vault, Tae-Wan realized with growing horror. It's a prison. As if in response to his words, the lights flickered. In that brief moment of darkness, he saw movement from the corner of his eye, a shadow where no shadow should be. The scraping sound came again, now just outside the chamber. Tae-Wan ducked behind a control panel as something massive moved past the doorway. I need to find another way out, he whispered, to himself, studying the chamber for any signs of an emergency exit, before I meet whatever broke out of here. Tae-Wan moved silently through the shadows of the chamber, keeping low. His years fixing machines in dangerous mining colonies had taught him to stay quiet when necessary. The blue emergency lights flickered, casting moving shadows across the walls. After the scraping sounds passed, he emerged from hiding and approached one of the damaged control panels. The alien technology was complex, but he recognized enough to access basic functions. With careful movements, he managed to activate a terminal. Strange symbols flashed across the screen before converting to standard coalition language. Research, log, specimen alpha, the heading read. Tae-Wan scrolled through the files quickly, aware that whatever had made those sounds might return. The logs told a disturbing story. The Vexari scientists had discovered something ancient, buried deep within an uninhabited world, something that defied their understanding of biology and physics. They had brought it here to study in secret, away from the oversight of the Galactic Coalition. Day 47. Specimen continues to alter its molecular structure. Our containment measures barely hold. Tae-Wan read silently. Day 58. 3 researchers exposed during containment breach, all showing signs of mental deterioration. The final entry chilled him. It's aware, not just alive, conscious. It watches us. It learns. We must inform the Council. But communications have failed. We are trapped. A distant crash echoed through the facility. Tae-Wan closed the files and continued his exploration, moving toward what appeared to be a research area. Inside, he found laboratory equipment scattered across the floor, some smashed as if in a struggle. Specimen containers lined the walls, most empty or broken. One remained intact, containing what looked like a piece of crystalline material that slowly pulsed with inner light. A label identified it as original fragment, source material. Tae-Wan examined the fragment without touching the container. The crystal seemed to shift and move slightly, even though nothing was disturbing it. As he watched, it briefly formed what looked like a tiny face before dissolving back into formlessness. What were they doing here? He whispered. In the center of the lab, a larger containment unit stood empty, its reinforced glass shattered outward. Dark stains marred the floor around it. Dried fluids that might have been blood, though not of any color Tae-Wan recognized. His Scanner picked up unusual energy readings coming from an adjacent room. Following the signal, he pushed open a heavy door and froze at the threshold. The bodies of the Vixari research team lay scattered across the floor, but something was terribly wrong with them. Their normally translucent bodies had begun to crystallize, limbs elongated to impossible proportions. Their faces were frozen in expressions of horror, mouths open in silent screams. Taewon fought down his rising panic. One body nearby clutched a personal recording device. With trembling hands, he picked it up and activated it. The holographic image of Research Director Jiho appeared, his usually immaculate appearance now disheveled, eyes wild with fear. "If anyone finds this, stay away," the recording began. "The specimen escaped containment 3 days ago. It's not what we thought. Not a simple organism. It's ancient, intelligent. It speaks to us now, not with sound, but directly into our minds." Jiho looked over his shoulder nervously before continuing. "We thought we were studying it. We were wrong. It was studying us, learning our weaknesses. It changes things, changes people." Daesung was the first. He started hearing voices, then his skin began to transform. Now the others are showing symptoms. The recording flickered as Jiho moved closer to the camera. "It feeds on energy and matter, reshaping them. But what it truly wants is to understand, to learn. It consumes knowledge as much as physical material. I've sealed the primary vault door, but I don't think it will hold. If you're watching this, destroy this entire facility. It must not reach inhabited worlds." The recording ended abruptly. Taewon stood motionless, trying to process what he'd learned. Whatever had killed these researchers was still in the vault, with him. And from what Jiho had said, it was intelligent and dangerous. A soft whisper brushed against his mind, so faint he almost thought he imagined it. He spun around, scanning the room, but saw nothing unusual. The whisper came again, slightly, stronger, new, different, interesting. Taewon backed toward the door, heart pounding. The whisper wasn't coming through his ears. Somehow it was forming directly in his thoughts. "Who's there?" he called, trying to keep his voice steady. No answer came, but the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. The lights dimmed as if something was drawing power from them. Following instinct, Taewon ran. He sprinted back through the laboratory and into the corridor beyond, not caring now about the noise he made. The whisper followed, growing stronger. "Stay, study, learn." The corridor ahead began to warp strangely, the walls seeming to breathe. Taewon skidded to a halt as a shimmering distortion appeared before him, blocking his path. It had no definite shape, shifting constantly like oil on water, but somehow forming the suggestion of a figure. Behind him, the bodies of the researchers were being dragged across the floor by an invisible force, leaving dark smears. They were converging on the shimmering distortion, being absorbed into it. Taewon turned and fled in the opposite direction, the whispers in his mind growing to an insistent chorus. Ahead, he saw massive doors marked with warning symbols. The central chamber, where the entire facility's systems could be controlled. His only hope lay inside. As the doors slid open before him, the lights throughout the facility flickered and died, leaving only the pulsing glow of emergency backups. In that brief darkness, Taewon felt something cold brush against his mind. More insistent now. Human, different. Strong mind. "Show me." Taewon slammed the central chamber doors shut behind him, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The massive room hummed with power. Screens lined the circular walls, displaying facility systems and security feeds that showed only static. In the center stood a raised platform surrounded by what remained of advanced containment technology. He rushed to the main control panel, fingers flying across the alien interface. Years of working with the xenotech had taught him to recognize patterns, even in unfamiliar systems. He needed to restore power to find some way to communicate with the station outside. "Curious creature," a voice whispered directly into his mind. "Another organic come to study me?" Taewon spun around. The air in the center of the chamber began to ripple and distort. Colors no human eye was meant to see swirled together, forming a slowly spinning mass that both attracted and repelled the eye. It had no fixed shape, constantly flowing and reforming. "What are you?" Tae-Wan asked, his voice steadier than he felt. The entity expanded slightly, tendrils of energy reaching outward before pulling back. "I am the last of my kind. We existed when your species still huddled in caves, fighting for survival with sticks and stones." Images flashed through Tae-Wan's mind, stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling, knowledge beyond human comprehension. He gripped the edge of the control panel to steady himself. "The Vexari found you," he said. "They brought you here to study you." A sound like distant laughter filled his thoughts. They believed they were the researchers and I the subject. They were mistaken. The entity drifted closer. Tae-Wan felt a pressure building in his skull, like something trying to push its way inside his mind. "Your brain structure is different," the entity observed. "Most organics break quickly under my influence. Their minds are more fragile, but you resist." Tae-Wan stepped back, fighting the intrusion. "Humans are stubborn." "Yes, your species is known for this. It makes you dangerous. It makes you useful." The pressure increased. Images flooded Tae-Wan's mind, his home on Earth, his family, his deepest fears and strongest desires. The entity was sifting through his memories, learning about him. "Stop," he gasped, falling to one knee. Surprisingly, the pressure eased. The entity pulsed with changing colors. "I have been imprisoned for too long. The Vexari feared what they could not control. They sought to use my abilities, to weaponize what I am." Tae-Wan slowly stood, keeping his eyes on the swirling mass. "What did you do to the research team?" "I learned from them. Their bodies taught me about organic matter. Their minds showed me this reality's rules." The entity shifted, briefly taking a form that resembled a Vexari before dissolving back into formlessness. "But their bodies were weak. They broke too, easily." "And you want to do the same to me?" Tae-Wan asked, mind racing as he assessed the chamber's systems. "No. You are different. Humans adapt. You survive conditions that would destroy other species. Your minds bend, but rarely break." The entity expanded again, filling more of the room. "Help me leave this prison, human. In exchange, I offer knowledge. Power. I can show you secrets of the universe no human has ever known." Tendrils of energy reached toward Tae-Wan, not touching him but displaying swirling star maps, mathematical formulas that solved problems humans had struggled with for centuries. Technology far beyond coalition understanding. "All this can be yours," the entity whispered. "Simply disable the remaining containment fields." Tae-Wan's eyes darted to a system display. The entity was still partially contained by backup fields. If those failed, nothing would stop it from spreading throughout the station, the asteroid, and beyond. "And if I refuse?" he asked. The entity's form darkened. "Then I will take what I need. The choice is whether you benefit or suffer." To demonstrate its power, the entity sent another wave of pressure against Tae-Wan's mind. This time, the pain was intense, driving him to his knees. "Most species break within moments under this pressure," the entity said, easing back again. "Yet you remain conscious. Fascinating." Tae-Wan gasped for breath, his mind racing. Looking around the chamber with a mechanic's eye, he began to understand the containment systems. They weren't destroyed. They had been sabotaged. With the right adjustments, they could be restored, perhaps even strengthened. "I need time to think," he said, slowly standing again. "Time is limited," the entity replied. "Your kind approaches with weapons that could destroy this entire asteroid. They fear what they do not understand." To prove its point, the entity activated a communication screen. Through static, Tae-Wan saw coalition ships surrounding the asteroid. They were preparing to implement emergency containment, complete destruction. "They will sacrifice you to destroy me," the entity said. "Help me escape, and we will both survive." The entity shifted again, and suddenly Tae-Wan was looking at his sister Minji, who had died years earlier in a mining accident. "I can give You back what you've lost, the entity said through Minji's mouth, her voice perfectly recreated. Family, purpose, belonging. Taewon's heart ached at the sight, but his eyes narrowed. You're desperate, he realized aloud. The containment is weakened but still holding. You can't leave without help. Minji's face twisted with anger before dissolving back into the swirling mass. I have existed for eons. I will not be imprisoned by primitive creatures. As the entity raged, Taewon noticed something on the system display, a power fluctuation in the containment field. The entity's emotional response was weakening its control, and in that moment, Taewon saw a possible solution, a way to reconfigure the containment protocols. But to implement it, he would need to reach the main control array directly beneath the entity itself. Taewon kept his face neutral as his mind raced. The entity hovered between him and the main control array, the only place where he could reconfigure the containment field. He needed a distraction. You're right, he said, feigning defeat. The Coalition will destroy this asteroid. They've done it before when faced with unknown threats. The entity pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. Then you will help me? I need to understand what I'm dealing with first. Taewon moved slowly toward a side console, as if merely seeking information. Show me what you really are. The entity expanded, filling more of the chamber with swirling colors and patterns. As it focused on creating an impressive display, Taewon quietly activated his scanner, setting it to emit an electromagnetic pulse on a timer. I am beyond your comprehension, the entity said, its mental voice growing stronger. My kind evolved, past physical form when your ancestors first discovered fire. The display grew more complex, showing impossible geometries and dimensions that hurt Taewon's eyes. He looked away, using the moment to grab tools from his belt. And what will you do if you escape? He asked, keeping the entity talking. Explore. Learn. This galaxy teems with life forms I have not studied. The entity formed tentacle-like appendages that reached toward the ceiling. The Vexari feared my hunger for knowledge. They did not understand that my learning does not always require consumption. Taewon's blood ran cold at the implication, but he maintained his calm. The Coalition ships will detect any attempt to leave. Unless what, human? Unless we use the station's systems to mask your energy signature, make you appear as normal radiation. Taewon moved another step toward the main array. I could modify the comm system to create a false reading. The entity considered this. Your mind works in interesting patterns, deception rather than direct confrontation. Yes, this might succeed. While the entity was distracted analyzing his suggestion, Taewon glanced at his scanner. 10 seconds until the pulse. I'll need to access the main controls, he said, gesturing toward the central platform. The entity moved aside slightly. Proceed with caution, human. I am watching your thoughts. Taewon approached the control array, feeling the entity's presence, pressing against his mind, searching for treachery. He focused on thoughts of escape, of modifying the comm system, while deep beneath those surface thoughts, he recalled the containment systems he had studied. 3, 2, 1. His scanner emitted a powerful electromagnetic pulse. The lights flickered and the entity shrieked in pain, its form temporarily disrupting. In that moment of distraction, Taewon lunged for the controls. His fingers flew across the alien interface, redirecting power to the dormant containment systems. Alarms blared as emergency protocols activated. Betrayer! The entity's mental voice boomed, nearly splitting Taewon's skull with its intensity. The entity recovered quickly, tendrils of energy lashing out like whips. One struck Taewon's shoulder, burning through his suit and into flesh. He cried out, but continued working, rerouting systems and strengthening the containment field. The entity changed tactics, once again taking the form of his sister Minji. Brother, please, it begged with her voice. Don't trap me here again. I'm scared. Taewon's hands trembled at the sound of his sister's voice, but he hardened his heart. You're not her. The entity shifted again, growing darker, more threatening. I offer you knowledge beyond your species' dreams, power to remake your world, and you choose this? Pain? Death? Humans are complicated, Taewon grunted, activating the final sequence. The containment field began to strengthen, glowing barriers forming around the entity. Howling in rage, the entity made one final, desperate assault on Taewon's mind. The pain was excruciating, like white-hot needles driving into his brain. Images flashed before his eyes, everything he had ever wanted, everything he feared, people he had loved and lost. You cannot resist, the entity insisted, pressing harder. No organic mind can withstand this pressure. Blood trickled from Taewon's nose as he fought to maintain consciousness. His vision blurred, but his fingers continued their work, muscle memory guiding them across the controls. Humans, he gasped through gritted teeth, don't break easily. With a final command, he activated the complete containment protocol. Energy barriers fully enclosed the entity, cutting off its mental attack. The creature thrashed wildly within, its prison, its screams now muted in Taewon's mind. Exhausted, he slumped against the console. The containment would hold. He had reconfigured it to draw power from the asteroid's core. But he remained trapped inside the vault with no way to communicate with the outside. As the entity raged in its prison, Taewon noticed something strange. On one of the monitoring screens, a small chamber hidden behind a false wall. Forcing himself to his feet, he limped across the room and pressed the sequence shown on the screen. The wall slid open, revealing a small escape pod. They built themselves. A way out, he murmured, examining the pod. They never intended for anyone else to leave this place alive. The pod was designed for Vexari physiology but could accommodate a human. As Taewon prepared it for launch, he downloaded all research data about the entity onto a portable drive. The Coalition needed to know what the Vexari had been hiding. Alarms indicated the Coalition ships were preparing to fire on the asteroid. With seconds to spare, Taewon launched the escape pod, rocketing away from the doomed research station. Days later, as he presented his findings to the Coalition Council, Ambassador Zhu approached him privately. The Vexari have filed formal protests against you, she said. They claim you destroyed valuable research property. Taewon met her gaze steadily. They imprisoned a sentient being and experimented on it. Then they left it for someone else to deal with when things went wrong. The ambassador studied him for a long moment. Your species continues to surprise us, Taewon Park. The ability to resist mental influence at that level is concerning. You mean valuable? He corrected her. Perhaps both. Ambassador Zhu glanced at the other council members, who were reviewing his data with expressions of shock and fear. Your people are more dangerous than we realized, and perhaps more necessary than we knew.